Opinions heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McCoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Mac McCoy, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's The View from a Pew. Today, my co-host is Steve Arts, and Steve and I are in our 8th chapter, or 8th episode, however you want to use that terminology, of Why Choose Christianity. And this is a project that Steve is writing, and he's very good at what he does. And I hope that you enjoy the show because he puts a lot of time in this. And what we've done or what we haven't done, you've created, 40 chapters as of right now?
I think it's somewhere around there, 44.
Okay, and we're on chapter 8. So you are truly catching the infancy, the phoenix, if I will, of this program, this webcast, this podcast, and it may turn into a book. And it will be called Why Choose Christianity? And we will, as we go down the road, talk about other religions. I don't think are we going to get into denominations?
Not too much, no. Not a whole lot, no, not really, because that's not the objective.
Yeah, but we will get into other religions.
We will.
Judaism, Muslim, Hindu.
And things you might not think of. And by the way, I have a question.
Okay.
In the introduction, you always talk about the church lady.
Yeah.
Are you going to introduce me to her? I don't know who that is.
I'll tell you who it is. Well, I can't tell you on the air.
Okay, well, someday you may want to...
Well, one of these days I'll tell you off the air. It's Galen.
Okay, I won't tell her, though.
Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
All right, so let's start out with the word of the day. And this is always a fun way because Steve brings in words. And by the way, we don't talk about this before we do this show. Steve writes it, sends it to me. I don't look at it. This is his responsibility, and therefore it's his creation.
Yeah, I actually pray that Mac doesn't look at it.
Yeah. But you always have this big word. And what is the word of the day today?
I like this one. You're going to like it, too. It's aldolpated.
Adulpated.
Adulpated.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, just like it sounds, having a muddled, confused, or scatterbrained mind explains us completely, often describing someone who is acting silly, stupid, or eccentric, and I think all three we would qualify. Personally, I think that's true. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. You've subtitled this is stupid is as stupid does. So there's a statement in that also. The statement is stupid is as stupid does. And you're simply asking the question, is that true?
That's what I'm asking, yes. Okay. But the question really is, it depends on how we define it.
Good, because that's what I want to do. How are you defining stupidity? Let's start out with that.
Well, I decided to go to the most objective place I could. So I went to Google AI, okay? Yes, I did, because I thought I wanted...
You think that's the most objective?
Neutral as I could find. Oh. It's all preloaded. I know. But I had to start...
little Steve, you're getting all caught up in the new toys.
Yeah, but I referenced it. I didn't try to make it up. So according to AI, stupidity is I've already demonstrated, a lack of intelligence, understanding.
I disagree.
Reason.
I disagree.
Or good judgment.
I disagree.
I think getting one or three are too bad. Often leading to poor decisions.
Here's what stupid is.
Wait, let me finish.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, because the rest of this may explain what you're going to ask me. It is distinguished from a mere lack of knowledge.
No, that's not right.
Well, I'm just going to say why it is, and then we'll talk about it. As it involves the unwillingness to learn a refusal to think critically, or the dismissal of evidence. It can be innate, as it with us, voluntary, well, probably both of us, or reactive sometimes. Okay, now what's your beef?
Here's the journalism definition. Stupid is you know better, but you do it anyway. You know it's wrong, but you do it anyway. You do a stupid thing.
So that's a Macism.
That's just true.
Oh.
And then ignorance is you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So when I call somebody ignorant, I am not in any way insulting them. In many ways, I'm complimenting them because they're trying to figure it out, but they don't have enough information to make a good choice. When they have enough information to make a good choice, and they know what the right choice is, and they choose not to, Trump derangement syndrome, that's stupid.
Well, let's just say you're right, which I know you believe you are, and that may be true. But this would be kind of like the preface to that. This is how they get to that point. In other words, the stupid person, as defined here, doesn't realize he's stupid. That's
not the okay.
See, in other words,
you go on.
What you're saying is, I understand what you're saying. You're saying if a person, in a moral sense, what you're saying is absolutely right. If a person knows it's wrong and does it anyway, that's stupid. But I'm not talking from a moral sense here. I'm talking just about stupidity as a whole. Because if that was the case, you and I both have relatives that could be defined as stupid because they make these really bad choices. But the reason they do that is not because they're trying to be wrong. It's because of what goes into not trying to be right. They really don't have it figured out. They haven't really thought it through. There's a lot of things go into that. That's what I'm trying to get into a little bit more depth.
Okay. Well, we'll go through this.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll learn something. Because the way you're defining it, you're saying they may not have all the information they need to know that it's stupid.
That's right.
But stupid, they know it.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay. Okay, Steve, let's go down to your journalism.
What did I say right before we started? I said I want to have plenty of things we can disagree on. And okay. I think today we found it.
Well, you can't. Okay. So what are the key aspects or perspectives on stupidity?
Well, in my opinion, stupidity represents a want of intelligence and a dullness of apprehension, and acts as the opposite of wisdom or sound judgment. It often manifests itself as an ability to create problems that don't exist, and then demonstrating the inability to solve them, akin to what radicals do today.
Okay.
Now, so that goes further. Stupidity can manifest itself when emotions override logic, causing individuals to treat feelings as facts and dismiss contradictory evidence, like think of slogans, okay? Our stupidity is not just knowing something, but rather not valuing knowledge and acting against evidence. Stupidity is considered a significant threat to democracy and society because it is characterized by a lack of critical thinking, potential manipulation by the media, and everybody out there, and a decline in educational quality. In other words, stupidity, and my religious, spiritual comment, is not God-driven, okay?
Okay. Let me tell you something stupid that I do at least 2 or 3 times a week. Now, this is stupid. You can turn right on a red in Nebraska, right? Unless there's a separate red-green light for your turn lane, right? And a lot of times I'm out early in the morning, 5 o'clock, 5:30, no traffic out there. I've got one place, intersection, that dumb red light will sit on there and no car will go past me in the front. I'm stupid because I don't mind what the red light says. Why am I stupid? Because if the cop pulls me over, I've broken the law. But I know I'm breaking the law. I know I'm doing something wrong. That's stupid.
Well, I was stupid last week also on a traffic issue. So I come up to this light, and I looked both ways, and nobody was coming.
Yeah.
So I pulled out. Unfortunately, I forgot it was still red. And I turned left on it, and I thought, that was stupid. It was. Now, in one case, you knew better. In my case, I really didn't.
Oh, you did too.
Well, not really.
I knew as soon as you turned.
Well, yes, after, but not. I didn't do it. I totally forgot it was red. Do you see the difference?
You forgot it was red.
I forgot about it.
I'm Steve, and I'm driving down the road. If you're watching this, you see me. I'm Steve. I'm driving down the road. I look up. Oh, what's that red light?
Well, now
It's an apple.
It's not that.
Hanging from a city post.
Well, you know it was.
Oh, I just went through it. Darn it! It was a red light.
Genesis was about an apple afterwards, but this was at a T. That's where you get. See, I was at a T. So you come to that T stop. And I'm just looking. Gee, nobody's coming. I'm thinking, well, I got to do something now. So now, but that's a really good illustration of how stupid isn't always as simple as it sounds.
Well, what I was trying to show is I'm stupid sometimes. I think everybody is stupid about something. Here's another where you're stupid. Your wife says, how do I look in this dress? Remember how Abe Lincoln answered it once? Well, you look a little heavy, Mrs. Lincoln.
Did she even said that?
Well, that's supposedly.
Oh.
I don't know.
Rumor has it. Okay.
But that would be stupid of me to say to my significant other, oh, well, you look a little heavy in that. You don't do that. That's stupid.
So telling the truth isn't always the right thing to do.
Telling the truth, well, no.
See how you got a web that you just got caught up in.
The correct answer is, honey, you look beautiful in everything. I know, but I want to make sure that this dress doesn't make me look fat. Honey, I've never seen you look more beautiful than you do right now.
Well, I made a
mistake. She pushes me more, I'm going to look at her and say, I'm not talking about it.
I made the mistake early in our life where she wore these, had a couple dresses that had circles on them. You know what I mean? Bands.
Hey.
And I said, you'd be better off if
like
they were.
Jail jumpsuits?
Well, parallel lines.
Yeah.
I said, you'd be better in vertical lines, because it makes you look thinner.
Correct.
It was just an observation.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have said that.
No, I shouldn't have said that.
That was stupid.
That was stupid.
Did she still make you pay for it?
Well, sometimes. But the point is, I didn't know it was stupid. I was thinking analytically. I was thinking with reason. I had supporting evidence.
Right. So you didn't know better.
Right.
Then you were ignorant. You were ignorant that by telling her she should not wear stripes that go up and down, because she's going to hear that is, oh, so you think I look fat. All right, go ahead. This is not a marriage class.
My anniversary is coming up in June, so maybe this is a good time to review and prepare.
Always buy dresses with circles.
Really?
Yeah, not up and down.
Okay, well, I don't usually buy dresses that often, but I'll take your advice. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So what have some famous people said about stupidity? Am I going to get a C.S. Lewis thing here, maybe?
No, you're probably going to get a reprimand, though. The theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
We know who that is.
Yeah. He was writing from Nazi imprisonment, and he identified stupidity not as an innate lack of intelligence, but as a sociological problem where individuals lose the ability to think independently, often in connection with power, resulting in a dangerous conformity and blind obedience.
That's what we were just talking about with marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kinda. He argued, I always got to say, I always want to temper that. He argued that stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of good than evil. Can you believe that? Okay, why?
When you choose to do something wrong, who does that? Well, you're going to have to pay the consequences.
But listen, this says that stupidity is more dangerous enemy of good than evil is because it is immune to reasoning and facts. Does that make sense to you?
He argued that stupidity is a more dangerous enemy
of good
than evil because it is immune to reasoning and facts.
In other words, an evil person can reason. They can see the facts, but they, to use your words, choose to do wrong. But but a person that is stupid is oftentimes not able to use reasoning and facts to their best efforts. They just don't know how to do it. And this is caused by a lot of things in society that has contributed to that. Now, another fellow that might help understand this by the name of Carlo Cepalo, an Italian economic historian and a member of both the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society, stated that stupid people are those whose actions cause harm to others without any gain for themselves. Now, I don't know about you, but to me that sounds more evil than anything else. If you're deliberately hurting people, does it?
You just said he argued that stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of good than
No. That was the theologian. This is now the historian. You're talking about Dietrich. Dietrich said that.
Okay.
But Carlo is saying that people that choose to harm others without gain for themselves are stupid. But to me, what that begs the question, doesn't that sound more like evil?
Well, did you know you were going to harm them?
Yes, in this case.
You did.
Yes.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Wouldn't it be evil too?
Well, it could be evil.
Okay. But it is stupid.
It's stupid.
Because you don't gain anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stupid and evil are not the
Exclusive.
same. Yeah, they're not exclusive.
Yeah. So then another case, David Dunning and Justin Kruger are social psychologists who identified the Dunning-Kruger effect. Where did that name come from? A cognitive bias where people at low ability in a task overestimate their competence. This is a continuum that ends with what many of you know as the Peter Principle, the theory stating that in a hierarchy, people are promoted until they reach a level of incompetence, resulting in a job they can't effectively do. Now, I'm bringing all this together, coming together.
You and I are really opposite on definitions today.
Oh, yeah.
The definition of Peter Principle.
But, Albert Einstein said that the only two things that are infinite is the universe and the human stupidity, and he wasn't sure about stupidity. Okay? Okay. So, Mark Twain stated, never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and then beat you with their experience.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Forrest Gump.
They're people that argue when they know they're wrong are bullies.
Yes. And so basically they will bully you into the truth is what they're saying. Or
They'll bully you into saying, I quit, I'm done.
Yeah, they're just
I'm walking away.
Exactly. Now, Forrest Gump, we all know stupid as stupid does. And the reason I use this title and the whole meaning behind this is that regardless of what Mac and I say, and you can judge who's right or who's wrong, but I can tell you that on this side I have some support for my position, is that stupidity is judged by actions, not appearance. So while we may not appear intelligent sometimes, that doesn't necessarily mean we're stupid, okay? So, in other words, it's by actions. Actions is what really determine, in my book, if one's stupid or not. If you act stupid, you're probably got a little stupidity somewhere. Does that make sense to you? That's the wrong question. Does it make I mean, you're not my audience. I don't know if you make sense to you.
I don't know if you're I don't know if you and I disagree or agree on the core definition of stupidity.
How about Peter Principle? Where is that wrong?
Peter Principle is when you hire people who are never going to rise as tall as you are. In other words, you hire people that can't take your job. And every person you ever hire should be your replacement. Think about it that way.
Which way did you,
The Peter Principle is I would never hire anybody that could take my job because I don't want anybody to look better than me.
Now, it's an interesting point. I've never heard it that way.
I worked for a guy once like that.
Okay.
And he beat you down until the point was you would never get high enough in the corporation to take his job.
Well, I think Mac brings a from experience definition, okay? Mine would be the classical definition. Mine is one that you would find if you looked it up, okay? As an example. It does, again, I have supporting evidence, but that doesn't mean anything when it comes to opinions.
Hey, when you look at your dog and say, "Sweetheart, is Daddy right or wrong?" and she goes, "Wow, wow, wow," that's not good. That's not supporting evidence. Okay.
We won't talk about your duck. Okay. So, well, anyway, go on, I guess.
Well, so did you feel stupid at times when you were writing this? I'm sorry, I just have to ask that. You put all this effort into the definition that I don't think applies.
Well, that's funny you should ask. Yes, I did. Actually, I felt stupid every time I do this webcast, realizing how little I know. With that being said, though, I'm thinking just maybe there's some people who may be more stupid than we are, but as Christians, who are we to judge? Right?
Oh, now we get to the...
Now we got an escape clause right there. Escape clause.
I like that.
We can handle that. We need it. We need an escape clause. So I'm not trying to... What is the point of talking about stupidity? Because there's an actual problem in people thinking things through, and we're going to get into this a little bit more.
Are you trying to make us feel uncomfortable? Is that what you're doing? Because you're doing that.
Just you, Mac. Honest to God, that is the truth. And I'm doing a good job, I think.
Oh, okay.
We all would like to be best served.
Is this an April Fool's joke? At the end, you say, "Oh, no, Mac, I knew exactly what the definition of stupid was."
No, at the end it says simply that I wasn't trying to be stupid because I'm too ignorant to know. That's how I would answer that. I would be right in sync with what you think. Okay. But the rest of the audience would say, "I don't think I learned anything." And quite frankly, at that point, they probably would be right. So, anyway, so yes, you are feeling uncomfortable, as you should be, because this is an uncomfortable subject. And you'll see more why. We all would be best served to recognize how common stupidity is and how dangerous it is. Now, if this talk sounds like ignorance, it's far from that. This can... Far from it.
Very good.
Okay, I didn't write that. I'm just telling you that because it is. So this cannot be overstated. When people point out the extremes in wealth, power, morals, etc., it's easy to be distracted from the real culprit, which is stupidity. In National Catholic Register, Deacon Dominic Serrato wrote an article titled, and here we come back to, Bonhoeffer warned us, stupidity undermines a human person, where he expounds on how false ideas about freedom and the human person can spread even in highly educated societies. There are moments in our history when the deepest danger to a culture is not ignorance, but the loss of capacity to live in the truth. And that is stupidity, okay? Stupidity, in its broader context, means a lot more than what we think it does.
Do you think it's dangerous?
It's absolutely dangerous. As Bonhoeffer asserted earlier, it's more dangerous enemy of good than malice. In his experience, malice can be resisted and exposed. Okay? Stupidity, however, renders a person closed to truth itself. The stupid person, he wrote, and I agree, is not simply uninformed. He has become not ignorant. He's not simply uninformed. He has become an instrument carried along with the spirit of the age. Think mob. No longer able to hear, judge, or respond freely. That insight speaks with a particular relevance in our own time. We live in an age rich in information, yet often poor in wisdom. We have unprecedented access to knowledge, and yet confusion persists about the most basic truths of human existence. Can you disagree with that?
No.
No. We that live here today know that is true. When there's confusion if a man and woman really are different, we know there's confusion.
Yes.
But you're going to probably ask me more examples.
Yeah. I want to hear more. I mean, you're getting better at this.
Well, I got a point where I'm going somewhere, you know?
Okay, good. Get there.
Okay. Among the clearest examples of this confusion is the contemporary claim that human identity is not rooted in the bodily reality of male or female. I was alluding to that. But is instead something fluid, self-defined, subject to personal interpretation. Think of that. At the heart, there is confusion which reveals a loss of freedom. Freedom. Freedom is not simply the ability to choose anything at all. It is the capacity to choose what is true and good. And I have a real good support person here. Pope John Paul II insisted freedom consists not in doing what we like, but in having the right to do what we ought. Okay? That's big. Freedom to do what we ought. In other words, we should be able as individuals to live out our conscience and do what's right. But if we aren't given the freedom to do so, we don't have freedom. Does that make sense, Mac?
Well, keep going. Conscience.
Well, when freedom is severed from truth, it does not expand then. Freedom doesn't. Truth, it collapses. This is exactly what happens with contemporary discourse on gender.
Right.
Our sexual differences are not arbitrary social constructs, but a gift inscribed in our very being by God. Sexuality affects all aspects of the human person in the unity of his body and his soul. There is a widespread reluctance to allow knowledge to inform moral and anthropological judgment. So in other words, this person no longer stands before reality and asks, what is true about the human person? Instead, he begins with a prior commitment, and he says to autonomy and self-definition, and he says, I'm going to think what I want. So then he reshapes the language and the necessary subjective interpretation to support that. So in other words, it's backwards, okay? So if the world seems upside down to you sometimes, it is. It isn't a misinterpretation. You're not standing on your head. And I know, Mac, you may have to do that occasionally just to bring circulation back, but most of us don't do that.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, you're a very intelligent man, and you know how to write intelligently. I think we're talking about the same thing. Let's again look at my definition. Ignorant is you don't know what you don't know. Stupid is I know what I don't know, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know what's wrong, and I know what's right, and I'm going to choose to do what's wrong.
You're saying that's a stupid person?
Stupid.
Well, that is one.
For me to get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to identify as a black woman, that's stupidity.
Well, and maybe
to the nth, because then I'm going to tell you that I can go into the women's restroom.
But it does explain how you know so much about dresses. Now, here's what I would come back to that and say, though, that is a surface interpretation of stupidity. And those people exist, okay? But those people, really aren't dangerous in a normal sense. Now, granted, guy picking up a gun, I know there's, but what I'm looking at is how you can have masses of stupidity and how they get there, because that affects our religion, our lives, everything. It permeates everything.
Tell me, we're dragging in society into the middle of this, and that's not bad. But here's when it's dangerous. If I say, today I'm going to identify as a black woman, and because I'm going to choose to identify that way, I can go into the women's restroom and go to the bathroom in there. See, now I'm impacting you. That's where this whole thing becomes immensely evil. Here's your evil part.
Yeah, what?
When I decide something, and you've got to follow it.
Let me try to put a spin on this that might bring all this together. Bonhoeffer is well recognized for his writings on this, and he says the stupid person is actually under a spell, as he's defining it. He's no longer in possession of himself. Now, that's a lot different than choosing wrong, okay? That's why I'm bringing this up.
Listening.
Okay, when a cultural narrative becomes dominant, it exerts a powerful pressure that discourages honest questioning. Okay? Like, I'll give you an example. When we went through COVID, and you would go up to someone and say, do we really need to wear these masks? Do we really have to stand 6 feet back? Do we have to do all these things? No, you weren't supposed to ask that. You felt like you're standing out, right? I remember going into rural places at that time, because we have a farm in a rural area, and I walk into a restaurant, I'm the only one with a mask on. And they're looking at me in reverse, see? And so individuals may feel really tentative about asking questions because they feel like they're excluded, misunderstood. Now, in such a climate, slogans and simplified formulas often replace careful reasoning. Phrases like "be true to yourself" or "you define who you are" can function as emotional shields that close off deeper reflection about the nature of a human person. So this human person is not a self-creating project. No, that's what we're being told, but a gift to be received. So in other words, we do not invent our nature, we discover it. Our freedom is not exercised by denying the truth of our bodies or anything else, by integrating, rather, the reality. Now, in a Christian perspective, this is really important to understand, because we don't create who we are without God's help. And for us to be influenced by external forces, and that determines who we are, leads us away from God, not toward Him. Does that make sense to you, Mac?
Yes. Yes.
If you could go into psychology, Maslow and his self-actualization, that type of thinking was more.
You're kind of a geek. You know?
Well, yeah. For geeks, let's just say this: when you have too much time in your hands, some psychologists write these things up, and pretty soon everybody says, "Oh my gosh, I'm in my 4th stage of actualization." What does that really mean? Absolutely nothing.
I don't know. You keep using this word "human person." Are there persons that are not human?
Well, the reason I'm using that, why I put person and human in there, is because this is our humanity talking. In other words, this isn't just about each person or people as a whole, but humanity as a concept.
So you're not trying to say that a dog is a person also?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I thought maybe you were drinking the Kool-Aid.
No. If I was drinking Kool-Aid, I would make sure it had the desired effect.
Right. What happens to a person? All right, so you're saying this could be a spell. Now, can I replace that word spell with, oh, come on, Mac, spiritual warfare?
Yeah, in the sense of, yes, because what's happening here.
The spell is what witches do.
Yeah, and the reason I'm using that spell, why I'm using that word, is not because he used it alone, but also because you know people, I know people out there, all of you know people, you really wonder, do they really believe this?
Yeah.
How did they come to this conclusion?
They're one of the devil's minions.
Yeah, how could, whether it be politics, race, religion, sometimes you look at these and you wonder why, how. Well, this is talking about that, because a person that gets under the spell becomes fragmented.
Under the spell of Satan.
Well, you could call it that.
Oh, what else are you going to call it? Who else is going to put you under a spell besides Satan?
Well, let's just put Satan in there, okay?
Okay, good.
So the body's being treated as raw material to be shaped according to some subjective desire. Satan says, hey, don't worry about what you've been told. This is what you're really going to get out of this.
Yes.
Rather than a meaningful sign of who we really are. So in this way, what is presented as liberation can in fact become a new form of bondage. Because isn't bondage sin? Now we're on the same page.
I agree.
And we were in different chapters for a while. Okay, the person is no longer free to receive himself as a gift, but now he's burdened with the task of inventing himself because he's been distracted, deterred, often under significant social pressure because evil manifests itself publicly as well. So this is why the church insists that conscience does not create truth, but bears witness to it. Does that make sense? That's a really heavy comment, because what's saying is that if you followed your individual conscience and it was influenced the wrong way, you might be off track. But But if you're bearing witness to what's already been demonstrated to be true, that's an active conscience.
For those of you that feel like you're being talked down to, you are.
I'm sorry. So let me put it in terms that make sense. I'm sorry. So think of the conscience as not an independent, exclusive capacity to decide what is good and evil, but rather as a judgment in which the person recognizes objective moral law. Does that make sense? Moral law. In other words, some things are right, some things are wrong. Society has demonstrated for centuries to be blind to that, to ignore that is way off kilter. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a way. See, here's the dividing line. Okay, how do I know the difference between right and wrong? I read my Bible. I don't read the Constitution. I mean, I do, but that's not how I determine it. If tomorrow the law was changed that you could have an abortion all the way up to the last day before birth, I would tell you that's not right. That's not biblical. But someone who says they could do that, they have a different bottom line than we do.
Yeah, because a conscience shouldn't be reduced to a mere expression of personal preference, okay? It loses its grounding when that happens in its authority. The person is left without a stable reference point and becomes vulnerable to the shifting winds of culture. So what you're saying too?
Shifting winds of culture.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that these people that what I'm using with stupidity are being affected by the culture and losing their way. And in many cases, they're not bad people trying to choose the wrong thing. That's what my bottom line is. So am I saying all stupid people are bad? No. But I will say this. They've been influenced in a way that leading them to bad decisions.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to listen.
Well, you might ask what's needed. I think part of what's needed is compassion, but trouble is, we get compassion when it gets separated from truth. Then we have problems too, because then we get liberation, and we need to have that in Jesus Christ. In other words, you can't be free without having Jesus involved, because truth came from God.
Now, is that our opinion, or is that the truth?
That's the truth.
Now, you see, our enemies would tell us that that's our opinion.
Of course they would.
And they don't agree with our opinion. So how do we get, here's what I don't understand. Well, here's what I don't understand. And if you want to make my face turn red and really get me fired up, you tell me that abortion is okay. And here's why it's not. Because if I'm a woman and I'm driving down the road and I'm on the way to the abortion clinic, and somebody T-bones me and my baby dies, they're charged with manslaughter.
Right.
If that person doesn't hit me and I go to the abortion clinic, it's called a choice.
Right.
And they want that choice to be legal. And it's the hypocrisy that I don't understand.
Well, you remember that John 8:32, it says, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. What that all has to do with is careful balance of truth and charity. And here's what's happening, and answer your question. The greatest danger is quietly drifting away from truth and gradually accepting ideas that seem, maybe they're good, maybe they're compassionate, maybe they sound liberating, but ultimately that obscure the reality of who we really are and whose we are. Now, when that happens, when truth is welcomed, and that's one thing, but if it's no longer accepted, that's another. In other words, if you can play lip service to it only, that's not good. So if the conscience wakes up and starts recognizing who we are, the people, and who God is, and what the dignity of the truth really is, that comes back to dignity of the person. You can't possibly kill an infant and say it's not murder. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
But people do, and they get away with it. How does that happen?
Well, that's really
And that's not a rhetorical question.
no. No, that's really good. You're very insightful, because what that, in my opinion, what this means is, if you can get the law to say it's okay, you can hide behind that.
Yeah.
So, in other words, that's where this stupidity comes into play. If you get manipulated, or allow yourself to get manipulated to the point that you allow reason not to really exist, you don't use it, and you deny the truth, you deny the evidence, but instead you go by the law to support your position, whether it's right or wrong makes no difference now, because you can hide behind it. That's how that happens.
Well, and when the line is crossed is when I tell you that you have to follow my law and you can't be wrong. I'm sorry. You are wrong. It's the opposite. When you tell me that I can kill a baby if I choose to, but if you choose to kill somebody else's baby, it's manslaughter.
Yeah, and you're right about.
And we could get off the abortion.
No, that's okay. But
It's just the place that I don't understand the law.
You're talking about hypocrisy, though.
Absolutely.
Anything that allows or attacks discernment, anything that takes away from insight, anything that deceives you, especially that seem evil, that's been. Evil power is being harnessed. So, in other words, God's power always overcomes Satan, but only if we don't act stupid. I mean, what does a stupid person do? A stupid person does not ask for God's help, and instead goes by the influences around him without thinking. Okay? Here's an example. I talked to a guy once, and I said, "Hey, back to Mac's point." So this guy took over this company, okay? And gosh, I couldn't quite figure out how this happened, because I didn't think he really knew much about the business, right?
Okay.
So I talked to an employee of that company, and I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, he took a smart pill."
Oh.
Now, there's a lot of us out there that might try to take the smart pill, or even believe somebody that says, "I just took a smart pill." Well, then of course he knows everything, because he just told us. Consider the source. Now, I got to ask this question: how does one relate stupidity to logic? Have you thought about that, Mac?
How does one relate stupidity to logic?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't look at the evidence.
That's part of it.
They've decided that they are correct.
How does that happen? I'll tell you how it happens. That's kind of like how you're misinformed about the Peter Principle, because you took that based on your experience, right? So the anecdotal fallacy that occurs when somebody uses a personal experience or an isolated example is a port of claim. Now, relying on strong evidence, so to say, one would think that's logical, but it's not. Why? Well, if you think about it, maybe I have no common sense, or maybe I have a lot of common sense, but I took logic, I took philosophy, I learned the difference between inverse reasoning and deductive reasoning, which I thought was common sense, okay? Common sense. But today, I can't believe it. I know how to reason. And when you take that example, I had an employee, and I'm not making fun of you, Mac. I just use it as an example, and not a good example. But let's say Mac had an employee that wasn't good, and he's the only one that wore blue jeans. Now, that's a good example. And so Mac says, I'm never going to hire anybody again that wears blue jeans, because they're not good employees. Now, that sounds rational if you're thinking inversely. I'll take this and magnify it to the world.
Well, that's bigotry and racism.
Yeah, well, just plain
Never going to hire somebody because of the color of their skin.
It's also
never going to hire somebody because they wear jeans, and we think that's a decision that doesn't fit the culture of our company.
It's also stupid. That is stupid. Now, if you take and find out...
Well, yeah, it is.
See, that is stupid.
Yeah.
And he may not know it. He doesn't realize it. But, boy, it's stupid. Now, on the other hand, let's say that this guy did a study, and 99% of I'm not trying to be racist here, but let's say this was done in the 50s. Okay, I'm just using an example. 99% of those women that were successful in the marketplace wore dresses.
Okay.
Well, back then, probably 100% wore dresses. So 90, in other words, that would be, so can we deduce then that most women that wear dresses that would be best bet? That's deductive reasoning. Now, I just think that's part of what's missing here. We don't know how to think. We're not being taught how to think. We're being taught how not to think. We're being taught by the masses to follow what they say. Or when I say masses, I don't care if it's an ivory tower or where, but we're being misled. And we got to start thinking for ourselves, period. And the reason I'm bringing this all up, when it comes to faith, it is a matter of thinking for yourself. It is a matter of discernment. And that's why I'm bringing all of this up. Because all of this stuff is grinding away at you. Grinding away. And you got to feel it. If you don't, you're probably going the wrong path, truly. You better feel some resistance. Remember Winston Churchill, we talked about it. A kite goes up against the wind. In a religious, a person that really is striving to live a best life he can has got to feel some resistance, or otherwise he is not doing his part. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be that way.
Okay. How do we sum up this daunting task before us?
Well, I'm going to have very few words on this. Jesus made it really clear that it wouldn't be easy to follow him, okay? So as a salesman, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to sell you anything that is going to make you feel comfortable or going to make you feel a lot better necessarily, but it will comfort you and provide you something nothing else can, and that's peace. At the risk of being repetitious and simplistic, we need to hold Jesus in our thoughts and hearts and have the faith that the Holy Spirit will do the rest.
You know, you're sly.
Thank you.
Because you just ended up exactly where you were supposed to. But you took us down this long, long road. You're pretty good.
But you know why I took you down that long, long road?
I'm not sure. It was enjoyable. But, boy, there were times when...
It's because we're being, as individuals, being taken down that long, long road over a period of time, and I am just touching on the surface. If I did any more, it would bore you and frustrate you and everything. But believe me, you have been... If you're a piece of wood, there's been a lot of scraping going on, and you don't even know about it, you know? And you might be surprised of what you really look like, maybe in the eyes of God, compared to what you were before. And I'm just trying to help us all get back on the right road. Does that make sense?
I would encourage you, the listener, to go back and listen to this again. I'm going to do that because you really did a good job on this. Do you ever remember the movie I See Dead People? Do you? I didn't get that movie till the end. And yet, there were other people that knew it all along that who was the character, Bruce Willis, was dead. And I didn't realize that till the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. I did not realize that you were going to end up as stupid is as stupid does, as you talked about stupidity and ignorance, that you were going to end up with the difference being the difference being a belief in Jesus. You did well on that, Stephen.
That's what it comes down to.
I'm proud of you. All right. On that pleasant note, we're going to bid farewell. But I would encourage you to go back and listen to this program again or watch it. Steve did an excellent job of going way outside the boundaries of ignorance and stupidity just to prove that Jesus is the only way. Good job. I'm Mac McCoy, Stephen Arts. Thanks for listening to Why Choose Christianity on The View from a Pew.